Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm. We continue on with our derivation. What is sensorality? What is a sensor? So scientifically, we now have a very clear framework. We are literally exhausting all of the logical linguistic implications of literally the logic from rhythm to algorithm. And so we've identified this fundamental difference, censorship. Why is censor spelled with an S? Why is censorship spelled with a C? Why does the word censorship contain the word censor? We have this clear conceptualization progress over history, right? I'm living now, right? It's 2026. There's a lot of people before me, and there's a lot of people after me. So you're born into a culture with this conceptualization progress that is intimately tied to functionality. You go find something in the woods, you're going to empirically assess its form and say, what does this do? And so sensorality has this natural differentiation in our linguistics. It's this overall chronological conceptual progress, and we're trying to prove a definition. Well, again, we're not trying to prove anything, just emphasizing my own realization process, what people would call emotional intelligence. It makes the entirety of derivation of mathematical proofing trivial because there's only so much logic. Not because it's like, I'm processing every information. It's just there's only so many fundamental progressive things, again, of this overall chronological conceptual progress of everybody. And all language results, all linguistics are independent of one person. All physical systems tend to optimum efficiency. And so the biggest fundamental empirical thing that people have not identified throughout science is when people say English is the language of science, or it's the diction of science, or it's why all scientific discussion, or it's the language that all scientific discussion is done in, is really this tendency of physical systems to optimum efficiency, and we have this fundamental stability of two. When people say we live in three dimensions, there's been this, again, concept or physical evolution of the universe. The Fibonacci sequence is that mathematical evidence. Again, the log or the base, the natural log E or the base E, that 2.7 and change, that is the numeric progression. Again, Fibonacci 1.6 or 1.7 and change. The base E, the natural base E, 2.7 and change, and then people logically say we live in three dimensions. So there's been two physical universal phase changes that have been stabilized. Haven't really used that verbiage in a while because, again, we have this logical structure that we're all bounded in. And so there's just this fundamental numeric limit of 2, and then there's this iteration limit of 7, literally our numeric system 7 to 8, which is one more than 6, 7, is the infinity sign rotated. And so we have all of this consistency of symbolism, of representation of physical things, of progression with different shapes. And so geometric linguistics, a letter is a shape, shapes are geometric objects, and we're articulating what has been called chirality, but this natural inversion process, if you have something and it's going to differentiate universally, there's nothing else. And so there's this concept of inversion. And then we invert, we go to opposition, that opposition stabilizes. We'll make a logical difference on that today. But then we're just all born into this same world, right? And so it's just like we have all of this conceptualization, this numeric limit that has not been articulated in physics or in science or in mathematics in any meaningful sense. But we're bounded, right? There's just bounds, and we're articulating every logical linguistic implication from rhythm to algorithm with proof by stabilizing what is a sensor. Generally, what is sensorality? And so that is what we're doing, a well-defined progress in progression of analysis. So we just move through our steps, and that's where we're at. And so picking up from the last episode, we kind of introduced or said two things that were directly contradictory, right? Tension limits energy, a statement of resistance, which seems empirically well-founded. You go into a room, it's very tense. Right, it's not really good energy. You're not feeling like you're able to move. Again, energy is movement potential. So tension to limit energy is, right, if you have some sort of resistance, right, that causes tension, right, it's harder to move, it's harder to get things done. But then immediately, kind of like 5 steps later, we say tension maximizes energy in the context of an animal crouching in the woods, right? It's centralizing its movement potential, it's tensing up. So does tension maximize or minimize energy? Again, just highlighting that as a direct contradiction, but overall tension is this direct iteration. Flip the elementality, the S in the T, and you get sensation. Right, so it's just some sort of linguistic element. I remember this from speciality, but highlighting exactly where we're at in this conceptual progress to arrive at our linguistic differentiation, the spelling of censorship. Sensorality, sensors, censor. Direct iteration, again, a triple iteration of the word censor. What is a letter to a note? Sensorality is a quick note. Natural definition, direct iteration. Do hyphens contract? So in the last episode, again, I said hyphenation and hyphens and apostrophes are contractions. Certainly apostrophes are contractions, but what does hyphenation represent? Certainly emergent from rhythm. There's this natural cadence to how you speak. There's this natural intonation to how you say words, transmitting meaning. But as a hyphen, I want to say a hyphen is more some sort of this preservation of chirality. When we have certain, noun, verb conjugations to be consistent, to transmit meaning. Again, and all of that's based on sound, right? Why is this word, feminine or masculine? It's not really a meaningful statement. It's just there's this consistency of sound, and that's what gendering and conjugation does. But what is the functionality of a hyphen, right? Everyone's very apparent. Naturally, people use hyphens in written language. But to me, it's just some sort of, again, this acknowledgement of rhythm, some sort of, again, just this natural spacing. Point being is I don't think hyphens contract. And I said that directly in the last episode, so I think that's immediately wrong. But again, overall, it's this conceptual progress because it's like literally saying, all right, does it matter if you're eating dinner? Does it matter if you take one sip of water first or one bite of steak first? It's like, it doesn't really matter. Once we get all of our things in the right place, the actual reduction is truly trivial, right? The answer is sensorality. The conceptual difference is the spelling, censorship with a C, censorship with an S. Point being, I don't think hyphens contract. What do hyphens do? What is hyphenation to rhythmicality? What is denomination to currency? What is currency to vibrancy? What is currency to race? Again, denominality, denomination, kind of had a cultural context to it as well as a monetary context. Is race denomination? Is race rare? Sensorality is despair. Natural definition, direct iteration, emphasizing I had DIS, and then I had to look it up and it's DES. Does despair agonize? Sensorality is despairability. Sensorality is pairability. Sensorality pairs. Natural definition, direct iteration. What is pairability to probability? Is despair painful? Direct iteration. Sensorality defers. Sensorality is deferability. Natural definition, direct iteration. Sensorality is referral. Sensorality is referability. Natural definition, direct iteration. Is referral assistance? Sensorality is persistent assistance. Natural definition, direct iteration. Is potential persistent? Is persistent consistent? What is containment to confinement? And that was a big word we introduced again. Vibration is a containment of motion, or confinement of motion, and then emphasizing the elementality, containment, confinement. Sensorality is obtainable. Sensorality is obtainability. Natural definition, direct iteration. Is obscurity oblong? Is oblong obvious? Direct iteration, emphasizing the OB 1-2 elemental slot. Again, we have this overall 1-2 many counting systems. Go look at tribes that are uncontacted in the Amazon jungle or on North Sentinel Island. And we have this, again, this counting system, this numeric manifestation of 1-2 many. Again, this empirical evidence of these stabilized universal phase changes. But again, all of that conceptualization is contained within the word chronology, right? There was a past and things move forward. The arrow of time. Sensation, but again, emphasizing all of these definitions are contained. They all build in the same way you're born, and you don't have to learn all of history to contribute to the world. Same thing. Sensation is the base of consciousness. Is consciousness concentrated? Are centers concentrated? Most rigorously, mathematically, we are explicitly articulating inversion, chirality logically. And it's again done through this logical exhaustion, this linguistic exhaustion. What are centers to circles? What is a radius to a center? What is a ratio to a radius? What is radius to circumference? Fundamental theorem of geometry, sensorality, senses, circumference. Direct iteration, emphasizing sense, circumference. Does circumference contain? So again, if you said, what is pi? I think the most rigorous mathematical answer is the relationship between the radius and the circumference, right? 2 pi r is the circumference of a circle, and then pi r squared is the area of a circle. But if you said, what is pi? It would be a ratio. And then emphasizing linguistically elementality, radius, ratio. But again, it's this overall mathematical presentation of a dynamic limit. This mathematical object used to represent physical interaction. These things, this notebook, it has local momentum. It is not moving in relationship to me. The independent discrete particles are moving. E equals mc squared, a mass times a velocity, is a momentum. The conceptual framework that Einstein was in was never outside of mechanics. Because again, it's this overall conceptual linguistic progress of everybody. And so, again, where were we? Yeah. I don't know, I forget where I was taking that, but again, our circumference, again, the dynamic limit is, again, it's just these things can't touch. Or these things like, my notebook is bonded, I touch the bottom of my notebook, the whole notebook moves, that is bonded. When I touch the notebook, my hand over here does not move, right? That's sufficient independence, or just independent. But the dynamic limit represents the pressure gradient, right? When I feel something, I say I feel a pressure right here at my finger, right? And this notebook is not going through my hand, right? And so that repulsion, that electric charge, that magnetic field pushes back. And so it's like, that's the dynamic limit, is representing that point, that tension point, that point of interaction, that node, so on and so forth. That's what the dynamic limit is. That's what the Fibonacci sequence is. That's what pi is. That's what the cosmological constant is. Nothing golden lasts, pony boy, there are no constants. Everything is changing, everything is moving. Energy is derivative from momentum. Things are moving. How much movement potential that thing has is implied from the motion itself. Big science facts. But is a circumference a container? What is, again, just more explicit articulation of geometry to physics. Sensorality, senses, circumference. Is a circumference a boundary? Is a radius a boundary? Is radius core? What is the direction of a radius? What is radius to radial? Sensorality is core. Sensorality is chorality. Natural definition, direct iteration. The hyphens will be on your screen, but emphasizing, now we can move the hyphen. Sensorality is co-reality. Directly from the word core, generalize, move the hyphen, co-reality. Natural definition, direct iteration. Is reality core? Again, if you guys could understand and appreciate the logic, the logic of producing the linguistics form, how it's complete and comprehensive every single time, and you guys just don't appreciate that, and you can't. But it's every step is a massive proof, like truly. No one cares. There are no laws. Is reality core? Sensorality is a core store. Natural definition, direct iteration. Fundamental theorem of physics. Thermodynamics is fluid motion. Natural definition. So the most comprehensive, again, this is the general relativity aspects of even articulated fundamental physics that is still not like, just no understanding whatsoever, as it's all onomatopoeia. It's all sound associated to physical processes, not necessarily animals, but physical processes. And then we just have, once you build a card house, once you have logical structure, once you have words having meaning, once you have structured sound, and it's just all built on one another. And then there's just this chronology and conceptual progress of functionality. And so it's very, very serendipitous, it's very happenstance, it's very slang, the entire logical structure that we use. And so thermodynamics is the historical, most comprehensive thing articulated. Again, the greatest of all time equation, PV equals nRT, the relationship of pressure, volume, and temperature. And so then again, you look at fluid dynamics, we have the Navier-Stokes equations. Nope, once again, we have physics, we have water, we have liquid most generally. But look, when you look at liquid and you see a wave, and you say, what is that motion compared to, again, this thing sitting here, which isn't moving, but it has momentum. There's enough differentiation in that state of motion to say, what is fluid dynamics? Right? Thermodynamics is fluid motion. And then when you ask yourself, okay, of those discrete independent water molecules in a wave, what is moving? It's not the individual particle, it's the overall momentum of that wave, and it's a whole thing. And that's where you get the wave-particle duality. But for now, fundamental theorem of physics, thermodynamics is fluid motion, and everything just has a different density, right? Mass per unit volume. What defines a solid, a liquid, and a gas? Well, does it fit to its container? Weird as shit kind of definition. But again, worth it pointing out, I can't express myself naturally because I have to put my stuff on YouTube, and this is fundamental historical derivation forever, so it's again damage to my property. No one cares. But conceptually, these phases, right, solid, liquid, and gas, why? And then the definition, well, a gas isn't contained, a liquid forms to its container, a solid is the container? Like, what the fuck is that? And so I said that way back when, it's just these states of matter doesn't really make any sense. But thermodynamics is fluid motion. Everything is a fluid, but everything is suspended, right? Everything is all mass is stabilized charge, all of those charge induces magnetic fields, and you're localized. We're bounded to the Earth. I can't fly away from Earth. I have to build a big rocket with special Elon. But again, we're all suspended in this disaster. Dance, Gavin, dance. But we're all particulate, particle and wave. The thing that's waving is the overall momentum of the entire universe, I guess. I don't like to conjecture at all. The minute I feel like I'm not directly knowing what I'm talking about, I stop. Because again, you can have, again, this dichotomy of logic is I can build linguistic structure, but it has to be right. And so the minute it's not immediately grounded by intuition or again, direct physical thing, just no. But emphasizing that conceptually, everything's a fluid. And you're like, look around you and say, no, it's not. But again, the word fluid is just a word. And so it's like, this thing has density, this thing has different type of movement than when I look at a liquid. And so that's kind of, thermodynamics is fluid motion, moving on. Slow is smooth, smooth is efficient. Right? Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. That direct literal statement, smooth is efficient. Discrete things moving in time in rhythmic motion is smooth. Visually, it feels smooth. You minimize your steps. That's what a rhythm is. Everyone knows that if you're doing something you don't want to do, you form a rhythm, you minimize the steps, you get into a flow. Flow is smooth. Smooth is efficient, natural definition. What is efficiency to proficiency? Emphasizing the F and double F consonants. What is proficiency to sufficiency? Right? Efficient, proficient, sufficient, efficient, and sufficient, 2 Fs, proficient, 1 F, Y. Essentiality, 2 S's, especially 1 S, Y. This overall consonants iterating our vowels, which are fixed, which are based, which are stabilized. We continue on. Sensorality is sufficient proficiency. Natural definition, direct iteration. What is sufficiency to adequacy? Sensorality is inadequate. Natural definition, direct iteration. What is inadequacy to complacency? Sensorality is a third of a circle. Oddly specific. Natural definition, direct iteration, emphasizing the IR iteration. QRS is circle, third. Again, we're building up and I'm emphasizing each step because there's so much derivation, I genuinely don't know the answer to sensorality. I genuinely, with a 1,000,000% certainty, know the solidification of the analytical process in my own capacity is 100%. And so I'm emphasizing all of this progress because I don't think you get a random person like me being able to do this whole derivation trivially. I mean, there's no nothing. There's no difficulty at all. There's no resistance. But there's just so much derivation where it's just like, I'm emphasizing every step, all of the logic that could be present. Moving along. A third of a circle. What are circles to icicles? Again, natural definition. We've emphasized icicle a bunch throughout the derivation. Are icicles cones? I feel like we've hit that exactly and directly. What is circularity to conicality? Censorship filters Gore. Direct iteration. Again, this conceptual linguistic implication. Algorithmic. Sensorality filters censorship. Censorship filters sensorality. Direct iteration. See, like I'm still emphasizing the spelling, but at this point you should feel the conceptualization, right? It is what it is, infinite uniqueness, everything is independent. And so the spelling should be, again, that's the stabilization of the proof. It is the geometric consequence. Moving along. Is energy real? Does movement potential exist? Yes. Again, we're building up logically to an undeniable, renormalized logical statement by the empirical world where it's undeniably yes. And then that produces a linguistic consequence of this differentiation, some word form, some consensus, sentient, easily articulated logic out in the world where it's just like, do people say this? Yes, that means this. That produces this linguistic structure. This is what our definition is. And it's the form, it is what it is. And it's still worth pointing out and emphasizing, I during the derivation of speciality, I wasn't, again, probably couldn't have said directly where, again, they're exhausting a word family, but it's still this 100% fidelity of linguistics was been there my whole life. And so, but now we know exactly what analysis can be. So we're just building a definition, we're just exhausting these implications. That's what this process is. Is energy real? Does movement potential exist? Yes. Does liquid have movement potential? Again, on a direct empirical thing, forget all of these videos. Go look at liquid moving. Just water in a bathtub, water in a pond, and ask yourself, are each of those discrete independent water molecules moving? And your intuitive answer is no. That's pretty much all I'm saying with different words here. Fundamental theorem of linguistics. Sensorality is definitionality. Natural definition, direct iteration. Sensorality is the set of all definitions. A sufficient differentiation of it is what it is. One big linguistic consequence. Are definitions differential? What is a definition to a derivative? Is differentiation derivative? Direct iteration. Also worth emphasizing in the same way, like you can have, again, fraudulent criminals like Sean Carroll and Brian Greene. I just unfortunately watched them articulate a whole another hour and a half of literally nothing. Brian Greene has never been a physicist. He's 0% physicist. He's like an entertainer dude. He talks all slow and you can see him like talking to like individual research scientists as he talks to like groups of people like, here comes the ooh-ah, and it's just like, dude's terrible. No need to listen to Brian Greene whatsoever. He's a criminal. But what was I going? Yeah, they're just criminals. But I was going to say something else. It's always just distracting how much crime Sean Carroll and Brian Greene come together to articulate. But I had something more. What is a definition to a derivative? Are definitions differential? I forget where I was going. Lost my train of thought. They're criminals. We'll get back to them. We have some more derivation from them. Yeah, just moving along. What is a definition to a derivative? Is differentiation derivative? What is derivation to vibration? Sensorality is scintillating. Natural definition, direct iteration. Probably another big word, again, the photoelectric effect is scintillation. But the words that will be presented to you is an electron goes up an energy level. An energy level, what is that? Mass is discrete. This thing has a level. I can walk up a step on my stairs. That's a different level. I can get to a different floor. I can get to the mezzanine. That's a different, unique level. energy level, movement potential level. Nope, doesn't make any sense. But reflecting, if you have a whole integer energy level of a photon, the mass is the discrete part. That is where that comes from. But then they'll say again, still, what is light? What is this thing, right? I get what you're saying. I see it's right there. I turn on my light bulb just like you. But what's going on there? What is scintillation? Right? We have an excited state denigrating or degrading into a less excited state. But the mass is the thing that's moving. Photons is not a discrete thing. Right? We're in a liquid. Liquid is occurring. Liquidification. But again, just emphasizing the actual usage of that verbiage. An energy, a photon going up in energy level, and then that's called scintillation. The word scintillation is fundamentally ontologically correct. But what is scintillation? Right, what is scent to scintillating? Direct iteration. But again, what is light? What is radiation? Right? What is waving? Radiation is the thing that waves, right? The liquid pond, again, is not an analogy now. It's what is light? What is light liquid? Again, just emphasizing this physical conceptualization is already resolved, but this is where we're at immediately with our conceptualization progress of sensorality. What is scintillation? Is scintillation vibration? Vibration, not movement. Vibration, a cycle that does not do work. Vibration, confinement of motion. Vibration, movement potential because of confinement. Things that are trying to move, that are confined, if you remove the boundary, they move. Is scintillation vibration? Again, truly like the linguistic logical presentation of moving an energy level. What is that's wrong? Moving along. Is scintillating stimulating? Direct iteration. Does scintillation jump? Scintillation is discrete. What is scintillation to rescindance? Direct iteration. Does liquid scintillate? What is scintillation to escalation? Direct iteration. Sensorality is the odor of gore. Direct iteration, natural definition. Are sore losers gory? Direct iteration. Again, more of this direct linguistic presentation. Sensorality, Al Gore-ism. Not the presidential candidate from many years past. That was a funny emphasis one. But again, just sensorality produces direct linguistic logical implications. So does algorithm, which from rhythm to algorithm is kind of like our isolated thing. Conceptually, we have agenticality that definitely encapsulates and contains algorithmicality. But overall, you can't break language, and it's this reduction process, the conceptual reason to iterate this word or that word to stabilize this definition. But algorithm, sensorality, what is sore to gore? Loser, censor, emphasizing the elementality. Sensorality is sorry for the gore. Natural definition, direct iteration. Again, this word that we overwhelmingly use in English, sorry, but it still looks like sore, and then with another R and a Y at the end. Another linguistic element that's very apparent. What is sorry to sensorality? What is soreness, or is soreness centralized? Yes, tension points, you go work out, that's sore, that's your tension points, those are your nodes, disconnecting our logic and our words. What is soreness to sadness? Sensorality is sassy. Natural definition, direct iteration. Sassy, sorry. Sensorality is a sassy sorry. Natural definition, direct iteration. Is sassy classy? Direct iteration. What is classification to filtration? Sensorality is vibration filtration. Natural definition, direct iteration. Sensation, vibration, filtration. Sensorality senses the filtration of vibration. Sensorality filters vibration sensation. Direct iteration. Is greatness best? Sensorality filters out the noise. Direct iteration. Is noise nice? Noise. Nice. Noise. Like that thing. What is noisy to nosy? Now I sound like I'm from Jersey. I don't, fuck. Can somebody just give me my money? I hate this, man. What is noise to poise? Poised is composed. What is behavior to composure? Sensorality decompresses tension. Sensorality is stress relief. Natural definition, direct iteration. What is energy to pressure? What is movement potential? Equals mc squared. Ah, it's weird, but sure. What is energy to pressure? Equals mc squared to PV equals nRT. All right. Equals mc squared, a statement of momentum of this thing at rest, which doesn't make any sense because, again, energy potential, energy is derived from momentum, empirical thing. This thing's moving. Right? These particles are in orbit. And so you have the statement of one. Again, you can't even make sense of it. Like, there's no sense to make it. It's a statement of momentum. E equals mc squared is a mass times a velocity. But what is pressure to energy? What is movement potential to pressure? This PV equals nRT. This temperature divided by volume. That doesn't really make any sense. But just PV, pressure and volume, inversely proportional. Energy, movement potential. Again, this inverse energy entropy. You have less movement potential with less space. More volume, more space. PV, inversely proportional, more volume, less pressure. So what is energy to pressure? Again, just freestyling, because again, even these physical definitions, whether I take 5 more minutes or 1 more day of derivation, it just all sorts out really quick. And so it's just like, I'm highlighting this progress of these words, these steps associated to this overall progress. Is movement potential pressurized? Is potential practical? Is practicality realistic? Sensorality is proud, natural definition, direct iteration. What is sensation to condensation? Is condensation dense? What is condensation to vibration? And again, another isolated linguistic element, condensate, a Bose-Einstein condensate. Again, this overall, again, slang empirical evidence, just like what words people use where, is like extremely informative because it's this, again, consolidation process of the species itself. But we've already articulated and completely resolved the entire conceptual progress. We're just doing another integration of syllability. What is sensorality? By identifying its natural definition. Yeah. What is condensation to vibration? What is familiarity to filtration? Sensorality filters familiar. Direct iteration. What is partition to combination? So this was another, again, I can still derive some things off of Sean Carroll. I email him. Oh, that's where I'll get back to my point here. I email him all of science. He can at least talk about science. Brian Greene cannot talk about science whatsoever. He never has been able to. And I think the most valuable thing Brian Greene has brought to the physics, the entirety of culture for physics, is the movie Limitless. The chick that's dating, what was it, Bradley Cooper, his ex-girlfriend. They meet up in a diner and she's like, I read Brian Greene's Elegant Universe in a day. And it's like, wow, that's about as useful as Brian Greene is because that book sucked. But again, he truly cannot articulate anything. So then I got sidetracked by how bad Brian Greene was to even forget about Sean Carroll, who again is both raging criminals. But in this conversation immediately, or most recently posted on World Science Foundation, Brian Greene's little fraud campaign, Sean talks about combinatorics, which is, again, an interesting word in mathematical ontology. Is a combination, a summation. So I immediately fired that off. Again, I haven't gotten even like theorems from you guys in many, many years now, because you guys are just raging criminals, and physics is completely known. But my point being, where I trailed off earlier, was, again, if you're a grad student, there is no thought in Sean Carroll's head that cannot be directly, the dissemination of physical ontology is inevitable in the same way if you put a flame to something combustible, it's not going to not blow up because it's in a bad area or something, right? It's going to cause an industrial accident, so this gas is not going to ignite, is not going to happen. And so if you're stupid enough to be a grad student and saying, I want to have a career in academia, and the thing I'm going to go do is go to one of the forefront people committing fraud, racketeering, conspiracy at the greatest research level, who listen to a person, Sean, who is a fucking piece of shit as a human being, and think you are not going to face legal consequences, you are an idiot. I will give the current grad students of Sean Carroll 1 week to find a different program or to leave that fucking piece of garbage, or you will go to prison. You will never have a career in academia, ever. These people's careers are going to be expunged. We are not in the world of academia, and we're going to play games. Here is the fucking law. You broke it. You lose. And these pathetic losers like Sean Carroll himself will say, I'm not a confrontational person. You guys literally instinctually commit profound and substantial crime. Ongoing imminent threats to public health and safety. The minute the law makes any fucking sense, you go to jail forever. And if you think you're going to have a career and it's a good idea to go be a fucking grad student at Sean Carroll, you picked the wrong team. And as a person, I am a 32-year-old person that's never been rightfully issued a degree. I have had my personal life destroyed. I've had my health destroyed. I've had all of my research stolen. And now you lovely human beings are going to go steal it from me? Again, people being, in their 18 to 22, starting their PhD. I cannot put on camera how bad of an idea that is. Again, just legal and lawful punishment for everybody you fucking care about, truly. And then, so that's what I trailed off earlier on, is just because in the conversation, Sean Carroll's referencing how him and his grad students, they're picking up all this low-hanging fruit, and their entire research endeavor is profoundly fraudulent. These people are fucking shit, man. And so 1 week, again, I don't know who you guys are, but if you are a Sean Carroll grad student, you have 1 week from the posting of this video to leave that program, no questions asked. I'm not giving you an option. You will go to jail for the rest of your life. That is a guarantee. And so it is what it is. Fuck you people. Again, I have the rights to the dissemination of all scientific information because of general relativity. I am the only one that's articulated a proof. Speciality is special with an ITY. I have answered all of the fundamental questions uniquely and correctly. That is a fact. That is my property. You said, Brad, I said, hey, I'm going to write a letter to OSU. I can do research. Let me do research. You said, fuck off, so fuck you. None of you are relevant. Once you hear the right answer, there's no other answers. We don't need any other quote-unquote theorist besides my fucking work. Fact. And so I don't know what low-hanging fruit Sean Carroll thinks he's picking up. He's just a criminal, and he's just too pathetic as a grown-ass wannabe little bitch to be a man. It's just true. Gus agrees. You tell him, Gus. Bark if you think Sean Carroll's a bitch. Fuck. But again, it's just true. Again, I'd make the best of my day, but the reason that I am not sitting with a sign saying I am seeking asylum because I am, my rights are violated because they are, get me out of this country, is because I prioritize doing my work. Truly. My days go past just like anybody else, regardless of how much bullshit is going on. And I just truly value doing more work. Or else I would literally be sitting peacefully without any weapons, just on a sign saying, get me the fuck out of this country. Truly. But again, the behavior expectation is set at the global level. We all have cell phones, we all have computers. It doesn't matter if you're in Ireland or in Australia or in France or in Africa or in Asia or in China or wherever. It's just behavior has been normalized, and that behavior is pathetic as fuck, and nobody cares, and people commit crimes instinctually, and nobody gives a shit. I've been profoundly T-worded since I've been a child. Not surprising anywhere. Moving along. Is practicality realistic? But combinatorics. Back to math. Again, that word. Again, combination is a combination, a summation. Was relevant. Yeah, I kind of might miss some steps here. Hopefully not. Familiar. We did that. What is a partition to a combination? Right. Combinatorics does partitions. Right. A partition is a division. What is building to dividing? Right. And then Sean says, it's all combinatorics. Again, directly thinking about my research because we're just finding common syllability. There's just a lot of it. Sensorality directly limits proliferation. We're showing this minimization of the minimum most things you need. Right? Optimization is here's the least amount of letters to completely describe what a sensor is. by proof of, again, natural differentiation of the language already introduced by science. And so he's directly thinking that, again, committing crime, racketeering, and fraud, and then he has no problem doing so because he's an excuse of a human being. And then he says combinatorics. It's all combinatorics. It is what it is. It's all combinatorics. Direct theft, again, of my personal realization. Realization is not unique. I am just the first person to prove something. And now because everyone's pathetic as shit, they're just okay with destroying Brad's health, his life, everything this person's worked for, and they just can't feel responsibility. Just like Tim Dune, just like Tim Dune's family, just like David Paletta, just like James Ryan. Again, I can't even think of people that try to commit or contribute to society because they just play games and compete over nothing. And so everyone's just lying sacks of shit. That's just all anybody has ever been. But what is a partition to a combination? What is partition to petition? What is completeness to symmetry? Obviously, this big presentation, there is symmetry. Nope, it is what it is. There's chirality. Everything is infinitely unique, which is redundancy even there. Everything is unique. But we assume symmetries in mathematics. It's just wrong. Is complete symmetric? Is symmetry complete? Sensorality facilitates filtration. What is facilitation to scintillation? What is scintillation to fermentation? What is fermentation to information? Is suspension movement? What is vibration to suspension? Is movement manual? So this is what I alluded to earlier, fundamental theorem of logic. An inverse is the same thing. A perverse is an opposite. Again, obviously we have emotional range use, what a pervert is, but logically and mathematically, right, something exists. If there's only one thing, the only way to differentiate is to make some sort of inversion, is the right word. Then the maximum of an inverse is an opposite. Right? The most different something can be is opposition. Then we have that linguistic presentation, position, posit, op, position. But, right, if you're perverted, right, like Sean Carroll, if you're perverse, but again, focusing on the logic here, if something is perverse, to me it's opposite. Making this differentiation of what, again, is an inverse, what is identity, and what is opposition. An inverse is the same thing. Energy, entropy, two ways to describe movement potential. This has movement potential, energy. This isn't energy, entropy. This is velocity, movement. Nice. What is its inverse? Viscosity, resistance to movement. Two words to describe the same thing. Perverse is just to mean, this is a logical difference, hence theorem of logic. A perverse is an opposite. Again, logic, linguistic differentiation, worth emphasizing. Sensorality posits opposition, self-contained direct iteration. Opposition resists. Inversion flips. Right? Because again, this fundamental differentiation to our definition has to be a difference. I have to say this is different than this. What is opposition to inversion? Perverse is opposite. What is flipping to slipping? What is a slip to a slap? Consider the following. Brad slapped Jen's what after receiving sloppy what from Jen? Consider the following. The op slipped and got slapped. Right? Fundamental theorem of physics, momentum slaps. Direct iteration, I told you about the story when I went to we went to, what was it, Dairy Queen or something, and the cashier says, what do you think about the Oreo pie? All that shit slaps. Right? Very natural empirical usage, funny story, but it's true. Right? In lethality in the gun culture, you have slap rounds. But in hitting someone, you slap them. All of it is the same, it is what it is, articulation of momentum slapping. Sensorality stops, slaps, direct iteration. What is power to law? So the end of Sean Carroll and Brian Greene's fraudulent conceptualization, because again, differentiation is specificity, making something more direct, more specific, more articulate. And so again, this novelty is what jumps out. I can tell when, again, what's known by society, what is not known by these persons, and they're simple statements. Like there's extremely simple statements where, and there was another one on Demystify Sci podcast, which hilariously, guess what city those people turned out to be from? Columbus, Ohio. And now they're sitting down with Angus Fletcher from OSU, which is a whopping 20-minute drive that way. And then within the first 5 minutes of this conversation, and I don't even watch, like again, the Demystify Sci has kind of popped up, no idea they were Columbus based, or even if they are Columbus based, but they were now at OSU, Ohio State University, that great school. I'm sure it's not even possible to be a faculty in any university and not know about me. It is 0% possible not to be from Ohio State and not know about me. But our great professor from OSU, Angus Fletcher, is up there, and they're talking about like, I don't even know who this Angus Fletcher guy is. He's like biological science, like very far away from fundamental physics. And within the first 5 minutes of this conversation, Angus Fletcher is up there directly stating from OSU, mathematics doesn't exist anywhere, right? He's specifically saying narratives don't exist anywhere. Narratives exist. Narratives are narratives. That's all of the hypocrisy language you use to project out into the world and say you're a good person, Angus. But then he literally says mathematics doesn't exist anywhere. Again, articulating what I have said. There are no numbers anywhere. There are no words anywhere. It's all logical representation. That is such a massive, massive statement. It's direct theft of an intellectual result, of academic research. And obviously the entire academic institution is stealing from me instinctually, all day, every department, all of them. They're just too fucking pathetic to care. But it's to the point where, again, you just turn on a random YouTube channel, and it's just like this guy's stating results that are completely unknown. The general populace are too stupid to understand what's happening. That mathematics doesn't exist at all. Again, talking about the fundamental physical renormalization of all of logic, which is such a massive step outside of known historical progress. And this is some random fuck from OSU. Again, truly to the board of Ohio State University, I have grown up in central Ohio. I know the city better than you people. There is not one person in the city that isn't trash as shit. Just again, compete over nothing. Nobody raises their kids. Everyone's judgmental. Everyone just sucks, man. Columbus, Ohio is the shittiest city in the whole fucking world amongst worthless, immature behavior from everybody I've ever seen documented on the internet. You just turn on a random YouTube channel, there's Angus Fletcher, some guy, again, confidently articulating my personal result, and all I've asked for this entire time is a little bit of money. Throw that guy in prison, obviously. Again, if you're associated to one of these schools that are explicitly articulated, you couldn't be doing something stupider, truly. But again, at some point the law has to make sense, and we'll deal with that when it happens, if ever. Again, I don't have, again, my scientific output is a legal defense. It is my will, right? I have no expectation any of this shit will ever change. I have never met somebody capable of moral behavior. I've never met somebody capable of changing. I've never met somebody aware that that is occurring. That is why I got scapegoated for doing science. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Words have meaning. They have to be consistent clearly. Clearly, that's how we talk to one another, ever, in any context. That's all we're doing this whole time. And I just have already proven the analytical progress, so I know what's happening. Angus Fletcher, yep, mathematics doesn't exist, meaning, again, the physical renormalization. Disgusting. Disgusting. Couldn't be more of a failure of a human being. But never heard of that guy. His career's been over. Again, if you take a paycheck from Ohio State University at any point when, again, I can't articulate science for my own personal health. Again, talking about perversion, there couldn't be greater perversion than what has been done to me, truly. And again, I can't emphasize enough, academia has no rights to any of my property. I do not want them to benefit from any of my property. You guys fucked up. You guys fail. You guys are out. But momentum slaps. Oh, the power law, right? What is power to law? Because again, we have this conceptual consolidation, power laws. And then Sean Carroll's like, they're all like to 1/3 or 1/4. It's like, yeah, all simple, natural. Again, the only numbers that exist are what are natural numbers, what are whole numbers. And there's no logical difference between a whole or a natural number. If I take a chunk off my notebook, it's still one notebook. We would just say it's a broken notebook, or there's a piece missing, right? The discreteness is already baked into our words, which people use that analogy way too much. It's baked in, it's baked in, it's baked in, it's integrated, it's contained. But sensorality is a power law. Natural definition, direct iteration. Is law powerful? here's the law, bam, here's the law in a different color, bam, here's the law in a different font, bam. Did any of that do anything? Is the law powerful? No. But it's just, in reality, you just have groups of people exerting authority, and then the same amount of, again, don't follow wrong authority. Once everything synchronizes and people know how to behave, that amount of authority that we can do basically whatever we want, that is going to be pointed right back at you. I will never live a day of my life as long as this fraud, racketeering, conspiracy continues. I continue to beg for a little bit of money to eat properly, to sleep properly, and to work. I am seeking asylum. I have been persecuted for scientific discovery. My research, my property, which is the entirety of education, indefinitely in the future for all of the human species, is never allowed to be used for the benefit of the United States of America, is never allowed to be used for the benefit of anybody older than the age of 12 as long as this crime continues. And all I want, I'm such a practical person, I just want to live some aspect, some quality of life. If I could eat properly, sleep properly, and work, a 600 square foot cabin with, again, I could just comfortably pay my bills, go on nature walks, 20 minutes away from a city, I would be, again, 99.99% life quality out of 100%. I have no expectation my research will ever be acknowledged because people can't do the right thing. They have no idea how to behave. They can't. Again, don't follow false authority. Here's the fucking literal law, and everyone's just like, not a chance in a million years is the expected behavior to do the right thing. And it's at the point where everyone who opens their mouth and says rhythm, yep, direct theft of from rhythm to algorithm. When you write a research paper, when you make a statement, when you try to trademark intellectual property, you have to research the state of the art. I can't just go break law and then claim ignorance. Well, I didn't know you can't drive 1,000,000 miles down the road and just run people over. Right? Well, why would I get a ticket or get arrested for that? It's like you can't just say, I don't understand what the law is, so I'm going to break them all. Right? If you're doing academic research, you have to cite things that have been proven. And everyone's just truly so pathetic. They're like, we'll call Brad smart when he's dead, so like we'll just steal all this shit now and nothing will ever fucking matter. It's all one big fucking joke. Fraud, racketeering, conspiracy at the highest level doesn't matter. Again, evidence by behavior. Action speaks louder than words. There's nothing else to say. Here is the law. Fuck these people. To my estate, press every charge. I continue to beg for a little bit of money to try to salvage some quality of life while I'm literally living, breathing. And again, I can't buy food. I can't buy food. I can't pay my fucking bills. All because of crime. All because I was born in the most illiterate society in history right here, the great Columbus, Ohio. St. Francis de Sales, Ohio State University. All people who, again, are just so privileged. All they have ever done is play games and compete over nothing so that they can't behave properly. That is what I have for right now. Thank you for watching. See you on the next one.